The Tokyo Auto Salon is going on here this week, and there's a few notable debuts from manufacturers alongside all of the aftermarket tuner kind of stuff that you usually see at the Tokyo Auto Salon as well. And possibly the biggest debut here was the return of the Subaru WRX STI, and it is a real STI, but it's not the way we were expecting it to debut here. So Subaru has revealed the WRX STI S210, and for any of you that know your WRXs, you know this was always like the ultimate version of the STI after many years of that generation being on the market, you know, and they were always kind of the pinnacle of performance for these STIs. Very rare, very special cars. And so this one, continues the tradition in some ways, but, you know, they skipped that STI thing altogether. You know, there is no STI in Japan. The highest we've gotten here so far is the TS version tuned by STI. And so why I just feel like we're a few years too early for this S210 unless they are going to sunset this generation of WRX sooner than we're anticipating and sooner than they historically have in the past. But this is kind of a head scratcher the way they played this, and it gets more confusing and disappointing the more we get into it. So let's go through this vehicle here. So first off, don't get too excited about this vehicle in general because obviously, again, these are always rare and expensive. And also this is, I believe, only for Japan, at least right now. They're only building 500 of these. So there's your wet blanket to start the story here. But on top of that, though, if you already have one of the S209s, especially those of us here in the States, that was the only one we got here, you're going to want to just stick with that old one because it's going to be faster and more impressive than this one, sadly, because it does finally get more power for this new S210, and it comes from that new 2.4 liter flat four motor, but it's much less than the 341 horsepower of the S209. This one doing just 296 horsepower. Cue the sad trombone. And 277 pound-feet of torque. Just 25 more horsepower and 19 more pound-feet of torque than a regular WRX. So, strike one. You know, not an impressive power figure whatsoever, especially for this pinnacle version. I was expecting a regular STI to have at least 340 or so. This is just disappointing. And to achieve these tiny gains, they gave it a new exhaust system, different intake manifold, and retuned the ECU. Meanwhile, like all these aftermarket tuners are doing a simple stage 1 tune and getting way more power than this. And with light supporting mods, you're well beyond this kind of a power level. So I know from an OEM standpoint, they have different standards and different restrictions, but still, like, seriously, like, that's all they could manage? I find that hard to believe. Maybe this motor is severely underrated or something, and we're going back to the 90s where everyone claimed everything was 276 horsepower. I don't know. But regardless, it gets worse, sadly. So for some reason, it will only be offered with their CVT Subaru Performance transmission, which I haven't driven, admittedly, and some people say it's actually better than you'd expect. But it's still, this is the pinnacle of these cars, and you're doing a CVT in it. I mean, you think they would have learned from the Nismo Z and that mistake of people being like, why is there no manual? And, why they chose, yes, let's put a CVT in the most special STI that we're doing here. It's just strike number 2, big time there. And then, as far as positives, at least it looks a little cooler. It's got some new forged BBS wheels that look fantastic. It's running 255 wide Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. There's the carbon fiber aero kit here that looks great with that, nice big spoiler on the back and all that. Inside it even gets more aggressive Recaro carbon bucket seats. So, those aspects all live up to that S210 name. There's also other handling improvements like Brembo brakes and adaptive dampers, but we get both of those things already in the TS, so nothing notable there. And strike number 3 for me for this to be like a real STI, I'm missing the controller for the diff. There used to be a manual controller for the diff there to change the torque split. I don't see any indication of that unless it's electronic this time or something, but I don't see any buttons there on the interior shot to confirm that. And I didn't see any mention of that, so I don't think it has that either. And but they did at least add a cooler for the CVT, so hopefully it'll stand up to some kind of track abuse. But man, what a disappointment. Like, we were waiting all these years for the STI. I mean, admittedly, we didn't think it was ever going to come anyway. Last we heard from Subaru, they said an electric STI could potentially be a thing in like 2028 or something. So this is kind of a surprise out of nowhere, a bonus, if you will. But it's very underwhelming. And I say this so many times with Subarus. I don't know what they were thinking, and I would love to figure out why they thought this was a good way to go. Why they thought 296 horsepower was enough. Why they thought a CVT was a good choice. These aren't hard decisions. These aren't like challenging things to figure out. Stick to what people know and love and do what you know how to do. Make, manual transmission STIs that have a good amount of power, and they understand what everyone else has out there. They've read the spec sheets. They know what's going on in the car world. And then you choose to do less power than a GR Corolla, less power than Civic Type R, less power than everything that's sporty in this segment. Yeah, I don't know. They can keep this one, in my opinion. I mean, especially considering it'll probably be 70 grand if it does come here, based on how expensive S209s were pre-inflation. But yeah, that one is a hard pass for me. And man, I don't know what's going on at Subaru, but I hope that someone makes some better decisions in the future.